Okay, welcome everyone to Troubleshooting 101. This is our second lesson in this course. These troubleshooting courses, they're going to work through some of the common errors that we see when we interact with the Reach language and the Reach platform, how we get through those errors, and we're gonna work chronologically through at least what I think sort of the linear process is. As you learn Reach and the errors and things that you come across, right? So last week we talked a lot about the Reach ecosystem. We talked about VS Code, the extension, and Docker, and these things. And this week I want to talk a little bit about when we install and when we deal with some Windows specific things that many users have issues with when we get started, and then how to maintain our versions, how to maintain our Reach version, Reach updates every 2 weeks or so. So there's a new version of Reach that comes out every 2 weeks, and you need to make sure that you're keeping your version up to date with that, so that you can stay away from any sort of errors that are unknowns, right? When we make updates and things are deprecated or things are pointing at older versions, we do get some strange error behavior that we're not familiar with, right? So you may come to us and say, hey, I see this error, I've never seen this before, can you help me? And I may say, I've never seen it either. It looks like you need to update your Reach version. So we'll take a look at that today too. And then all of these are recorded. We'll post them up on our YouTube channel. You can watch them up on our YouTube channel, and continue to follow along these lessons to become more advanced in troubleshooting your Reach applications. After we get through the updates and versions and stuff, we'll talk a little bit about wallets on Reach and some of the common errors that we have when we interact with wallets and testnets and these things. So the first thing to talk about, I want to talk about installations that are specific to Windows. Okay, the Reach documentation will show you that there are some specific pieces you need to integrate when you want to run on Windows. Specifically, what I mean is WSL. WSL stands for the Windows Subsystem for Linux. The WSL is when you make some type of mistake, you run a Linux system inside of our Windows environment. And this is important because Reach needs to operate inside of a POSIX shell, it works best inside of Mac or Linux operating systems. So how do we get it to best run inside of our Windows system? Now, I have it installed in Windows myself. Both of my machines, I have 2 machines, both of them have Windows installs, and I use WSL for both of those. So the key thing I want to talk about is how we launch remotely. So if I have my Visual Studio Code up here on my desktop and I open this, I'm going to see a regular WSL window, right? And I see this little green corner thing down here. Now, that's telling me open a remote window. I don't know, it's kind of small, you might not be able to see it. It's saying open a remote window. What does that mean? If I'm operating inside of Linux, I don't want my VS Code to be operating inside of Windows, right? You'll be able to edit files, do your regular text editing, but you're not going to have the same type of support for Reach files, which are designed to work inside of that POSIX shell. So what we need to do is we need to install some extensions here to help VS Code run remotely. So the first thing you do is you come over, and let me get back to my other window here. You come over here to extensions, okay? And I'm gonna look at the one that I do have installed. Let's see it there. I see WSL. Yeah, okay, uninstall. So this is the one you want, WSL. And again, this is gonna tell your Visual Studio Code that it can run inside Linux, okay? That's really important for standard support of Reach RSH files and interacting with the Reach language in general. So we'll install this WSL right here. This would usually just say install. I already have it installed, so it's asking me if I want to uninstall. So I've got this installed, and what now, right? So VS Code has the extension. I would close that up. And I want to come into my Windows system, and I want to get into my Linux system. Your Ubuntu runs in your Linux system. And I know that this is very small. It's probably a little bit hard to see right now, but we can't really upsize this. So I'm going to go into my Reach folder, and this is where Reach, the shell script, lives. So if I say ls, this is where that shell script lives, right? So all I want to do is execute code dot. And when I run code dot, it's going to launch a remote instance of my VS Code inside that repository, wherever you made the call from. So when I launch now, here comes my VS Code window, and we see we're inside that Reach folder up here on the left in the left sidebar. But the really important thing to note is all the way in the bottom left corner, you see WSL Ubuntu running in Ubuntu. This is important, like I said, for that support for those RSH files. So now you're actually operating inside your Linux system. You're not in your Windows system and sort of jumping back and forth and have things that are installed in Linux that you can't use in Windows, right? This is how you launch that VS Code instance inside of your Linux system, right? So that's really important if you're a Windows only user. Okay, if you're a Windows only, make sure you download that extension and you get WSL, you get your VS Code running inside of Linux. So now I want to talk a little bit more about the shell script. I showed you here what my file structure looks like. I want to talk about organization and directory a little bit. So I'll open a terminal, and it should be quite a bit bigger here. So I'll open a terminal and notice the home path, right? So we know we're in Linux. If I wanted to, not from here, but your other terminal, your other VS Code in Windows, you could open up PowerShell or whatever you want, but we're inside Linux. So we want to make sure that we have our home path as denoted here by the tilde. And then I'm inside this Reach folder, right? If I go back up one level, I'm just at home, right? And I can show everything that's in my home. If I wanted to show even more that's in my home, I would look like that. So, okay, here's the file permissions and things that are allowed inside of there. I forget if there's another one. Is it this? Let's try. Yeah, okay, yeah, LSA. So this shows even a lot more, right? But what we're really concerned about is our Reach install, right? When you run the Reach install, that is curl install, and this comes right from the Reach documentation, curl install Reach, all of this, right? This is where your shell script is going to be installed, and that's noted here by the green Reach, okay? How you or where you install this is up to you. It depends on what you're building primarily and sort of the complexity of your application. But let's talk about why I do it the way I do. So I have all these different folders here. So if I went into any one of these folders and said ls, you're going to see index.rsh and index.mjs, your two core Reach files, right? If I go back up a level, and now let's say I want to look at this file here, this called PR. Let's go in there and say ls and look what's in here. Okay, well, here is the kind of core Reach files. You notice the shell script is not installed here, right? It's not in this folder. So if I want to address Reach, I need to do it from here with two dots, .reach compile. And that should compile and show the verification output that you expect. It looks like there's some type of error. Balance at 0, application exit. Not necessarily relevant to this conversation, but definitely something we should troubleshoot. So I want to clear that out. And then what happens if, I mean, I see this in tutorials, it says /reach something, right? Why doesn't that work? It's saying this is where there are a lot running. Because when you say /, you're telling it on this level. Dot says this level, / says into. So this level into Reach compile. But again, if we ls, there is no Reach here. So that's what it's telling you. You're frustrated because, yeah, I installed reach, I just don't, I can't see it, I don't know where it is. So if it's on this level above you, which I recommend for a lot of these projects where you're learning, you're building a lot of test projects, you're not necessarily taking it to production. It's a lot more simple for you to install the reach shell script here. And again, I'm going to run ls and show you that that's noted here in green. Okay, so that's where I like to install it. But if you're having if you're running a more complex application, and let's say you have, let me find one. I think I have one here that has a lot inside of it. Yeah, so I have a few levels here. I have a few different folders. Let's say, maybe I need to install the shell script here, right? Maybe this is a big React project and I have to install my RSH file. I have to run my RSH file inside of one specific directory that's a couple levels down. I can come in here and run that same curl install reach and all of this, right? So there's a interesting question here. It says when you do a reach init and open up VS Code, it automatically installs the reach file inside. Oh, that's cool. You mean from Ubuntu when you do it that way? That's cool. I wasn't aware of that. That's pretty cool. But that's the way that I like to structure them. So if you then need to like install in some specific sort of React program or any other front end framework, some bigger program, you just want a piece of it that's reach. Inside of here is where you can install that shell script. So I'll go back up a couple levels, clear out what I've got. See, there it is. Okay, so that's a little bit about at least the directory organization when you're learning, right? When you're doing a lot of test programs and you're building a lot of things, I recommend it like that. When you start to work at a more production level, it may make more sense to install the shell script somewhere locally, and that's okay too. But just remember, wherever you have it installed is what allows you to address it, right? So I can say reach compile here. It's probably going to tell me there's nothing to compile. Oh, this one here, it'll compile that. Yeah, look at that, no failures on that one. But the point again is I can say with one dot reach version, and then if I need to go down, 80 jumps up to 90. So say dot reach version. Okay, this is something you're going to come across. So that's a little bit about file structure and sort of where I like to install the shell script. The next thing to talk is, I know that's a real version. So we see that this returns 0.1.12. That's great. You can always find which version we're on inside of our Discord channel. So I'm going to come into our Discord channel and I'm going to show you a few things. Okay, so there's our Discord channel. Let me make it big here. I go into releases here on the left side, releases. So we see here a lot of information about the latest release. And today is the 7th. We may actually get a new release later today. But you'll see it says the release candidate for 0.1.12. This is important. That's the top level version that we're dealing with. So you're familiar with your RSH file. It needs to say 0.1. But when you run reach version, you also need this 12. Okay, so you need to make sure that those match. But further, there are Docker image hashes that are related to each release, each update. So I see here that this Docker image hash is this number. Okay, what does that number mean to me? So if I come in here into my VS Code window and I want to check a little bit deeper into what version I'm using. So if 0.1 at the top of your reach file, I'll pull open an RSH file in here somewhere. You need to declare at the top of your reach file which version you're using. And right now that's globally, that's the highest level version we're talking about, 0.1. But then when we need to talk about a little bit more specifically, okay, we need to look for 0.1.12 that's installed. That's the version that should be installed. But then even more specifically, the different pieces have specific image hashes related to the latest update. So I say all that just to say reach hashes. That's what it's showing you. those specific version hashes related to each image in each piece of the Reach ecosystem. So I'm going to run that and show you what it outputs. Okay, so the Reach command line interface is using this image hash. Reach is using this image hash, the shell script. The runner, the React runner, this one, right? These should all match this Discord channel. You should come in here and say, oh, this matches. That's good, okay? If it does not match, update, run Reach update, and you'll get new image hashes. But further, what about our standard library and our node package version? Okay, I see that it should be 0.1.12-RC6, right? That's what it's saying here. It must be that. How do I check that? It says right here, run this npm list command. So I'm going to clear out what I have, and I'm going to run npm list at reach -sh/ standard library. Show me the version of the standard library we're looking at. This one has none. It says empty. So I want to install, say npm install at reach sh/ standard library at latest. Okay, and if that's a lot to remember, it's in the Discord channel. So I'll bring it back up here. It says that's how you list it. This is how you install it. Okay, so go to the Discord channel, go to releases, and that's where you'll see this information. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to get some output that says, okay, we're installing this for you. Doesn't take much time. I guess it may depend on your network speed. So I guess I have some other things that I need to update as well. But we'll finish letting that update. And it's important to check these. I can't say enough. Every week I would check. If you're working with Reach a lot, I would check every single week what version we're on and make sure that my version is up to date, especially if you're looking at launching something to production. Really staying up on which version you're using and making sure that there are no backwards incompatible changes. What if I want to point at Polygon? But sometimes they do happen, right? We realize some things that need to be deprecated, and a backwards incompatible change means that if you have that thing in your program, it will break now. Okay, so it's very important to keep an eye on that. So now I've got my package version up to date, and I'm happy with that. So let's run that npm. Let me clear it out so you can see it a little better. npm list at reach-sh/ standard library. See what I get. I get that's the 0.1.12-RC6 that I'm looking for. Okay, and just to verify, there it is again on the Discord channel. Wish I could make that bigger for you. I don't think I can on Discord. And all of the information you need about the release is also going to be here in this. I'm going to open and copy this link. This is the change log, the Reach change log. What is the change log? So if you bring up that link, it's going to bring you to this, the change log. And what this does is it shows you anything that was added or removed in each release. Each release, it's going to say available in this candidate, and later we're adding this function, tuple.includes, where we added manager to the optional field for standard library.launch token. Okay, this is very important. Reach is always adding features. We are just getting started in the features that we have in our language. There are many things that are coming. Every one of them will be listed here. So if you see, oh, I've been waiting for this feature to come out, this change log will tell you exactly when it happened, where it is, and you follow the documentation to what it does. Now, part of our initiative is to also include some guides about these things, right? When this comes out and you see, oh, here's an added manager optional field for launch token. we want to be able to show you, here's how you use that. Here's an example of using that. Okay, these are some things that are coming down the pipeline to make sure that anytime that we have this release, we can also show you how to use it and why you would use it. Okay, why would you use tuple.includes, right? We want to be able to also provide you with that information, that guide that says, here's the feature, here's why we implemented it, and here's what it is, right? So the changelog is very important to keep your eye on. Things will continue to be added to this every single week. The Reach core team is hard at work every week adding things to the Reach language. Okay, that is everything about updates, keeping your Reach shell script up to date, keeping your Docker images up to date, keeping your node package, your standard library version up to date, and then also what is included when we release updates. Okay, every week an update is released, and you can always find it inside of our Discord channel under releases. And special shout out to Dan, who is responsible for our releases, and he does a great job of releasing every single week, just about, and including all the information that you need to know. So, Dan, you rock. Okay, next, let's take a look at some more common errors that we see, right? So it may be hard for me to reproduce the error that I'm about to highlight, but I think you're going to understand when I describe what it does. So I have all of these files here. I have all these old programs that some of them are old, some of them are new. But if I went into a really old program and I had the wrong version, Reach is going to tell you that. Okay, let me go into, I think I tried this recently and I got the wrong file. So I'm going to try a different file and see what kind of errors I get. So I think I'm going to go in here. Okay, now I have just standard RSH MJS file and my build folder, right? Your build folder, what does your build folder have? Okay, I'm inside of Vault, which is going to be down here at the bottom. Vault, build. It's got index to meet us. Okay, hopefully you've been through the documentation, you understand what this is. But when you compile your RSH file, okay, you're going to run that. You're going to compile this. You run reach compile. It produces the back end in this index.main.mjs file. That's inside your build folder. Okay, and then when we reference it, we just call it back end. So you're not actually interacting with this RSH code. You're interacting with this, which is generated JavaScript in an intermediate step. I'm just noticing the version here, so I should get the error I'm looking for. This is intermediate code that's generated by Reach so that it can interact with your front end and decide how to build your smart contract, right? This isn't your smart contract either. This is that intermediate step before it gets to your smart contract. So I compile RSH to get this. I do not interact with this file. I don't come in here and change things. I don't do anything to this file, but I import it in the front end. So what does that mean? That means that when the last time I ran reach compile, it produced this file. But what if that was a very long time ago? Or I'm at some other point in production and now I need to check and see, does this file still run? So if I just make sure that I export the connector mode, we'll set it to algo, reach, run, and see what happens. Maybe I'll get the error, maybe I won't. Look at that, no error. So here's what I expected to see because of that old version, right? I'll blow this up so you can see it. All right, so you see it says this reach compiled, it says .concat label, right? But you come down here and it says this reach compiled JavaScript backend does not meet or match the expectations of this reach standard library, update your compiler and recompile. I think some of it's going off. Yeah, there it is. There it is. This reach compiled JavaScript backend does not match the expectations of the standard library. And that's because the compiled backend was compiled with an older version of reach. And now the new version of reach says, hey, I expected newly compiled and I don't have that. So most of the time, this error occurs because you need to compile your code. So, let's say I got that error, the compiled backend does not meet, right? I would just come in here and I would say reach compile. And when I do that, RSH is going to compile into a new version of this JavaScript backend. That's what that error was saying. This JavaScript backend, the compiled backend, does not match the expectations. This is how you get a new version. And look, now it's updated, automatically generated with reach 0.1.12. I didn't mention it earlier, but it said 0.1.11. I knew this was an old program, but I was just hoping to get that error live. Of course, we're demonstrating, so we didn't get that error live, but I have a kind of an image of it there, and you can get the idea, right? So you have that old version, and you need to update the compiled backend. Okay, all you need to do is reach compile for that. Now, there are some times when you say reach compile and it's equivalency as opposed to a compile. You'll look inside and you'll see a Docker file, right? And the Docker file is usually present when you make a mistake and your program doesn't run to compile, and everything for us is the same and doesn't run to completion. That's when that Docker file still contains old images and things that don't jive with the standard library. So in that case, if you have that Docker file, you would just say, and let's just make one just to be sure, right? Say, well, where were we at? We were in the vault. Yeah. So you would have this Docker file, and again, Docker file is going to show up when your program doesn't run to completion. Okay, so you may say reach compile, and then you still get that error. You say, well, Nick told me that's how you fix it. That is usually how you fix it. But if you have this Docker file left over, there's still going to be some residual images in there, and it's still not going to like that compiled backend. You'll still get that same error that says, oh, the reach compiled backend doesn't match. How do you fix that? You just tell it, remove the Docker file and then reach compile. Now, when you remove the Docker file, if you need one, right? If the program, the general course of action is that reach generates that Docker file, but then terminates and removes it at the end of its run. So if it runs completely, Docker file is not existent, and you may be experienced with reach and say, yeah, I never see a Docker file. The only time it's really going to be left over is when you make some type of mistake and the program doesn't run to completion. And when the program doesn't run to completion, you'll get this leftover Docker file, and the leftover Docker file is still going to have image information pointing to your older version. So you need to remove that Docker file and then compile your program again. And when you do that, it'll generate a new one for you, right? Okay, so that's a little bit about the compiled backend, that compiled backend error, right? And just to kind of show you what that looks like again, I want to make sure. Yeah, so the reach compiled backend does not meet the expectation of the standard library. So let me blow it up a little bit for you here. Whoa, that's blown up way too much. Here we go. Right, and it's this bottom error you're looking at. The compiled JavaScript backend does not match the expectations of the standard library, right? So you see that, you know, okay, I need to make some updates. I need to compile the old version and get get up to that newer version. So take that down a little bit and we'll move on to the next piece here. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about moving up from the DevNet to the testnet and a little bit about wallets. This is a common thing that's if you're new to blockchain, you're new to wallets too, right? So I want to talk a little bit about the wallet interaction as it relates to reach, and then some of the errors that we come across and best practices when we work with wallets. So last time we talked a lot about the error message that comes up. Yeah, I think this is a good one. The error message that comes up when you move from DevNet, when you're in DevNet and you're using that new test account. I think it's, again, to sort of reiterate what I talked about last week, it's important to really understand what these error or these warning messages are telling you before you decide to silence them. Once you really understand well, that's okay. But here it is right here, is that reach no warn. So let me take that out and show you what comes up again, and then talk a little bit more in depth about that. So we'll reach run our application. It'll build out that Docker. You see that? See load, build, deletion. I think it's the first thing it says. Oh, definition from Docker file. So there it is, creating the Docker file. I wonder if you see somewhere where it actually erases it too. Yeah, I don't see where it actually erases it, but if that runs to completion successfully, it'll erase that file. So now we get all of this output, right? We get, oh gosh, it's still going. Warning, warning, warning. Look at all these warnings, right? This is all warning material, right? And the one I really want to focus on is the standard library fund from Faucet. So we know that that comes from using new test account. But when we move to the DevNet, or I'm sorry, to testnet, this is DevNet right here. What we're doing right here is DevNet. When we move up to testnet, we also need to change what type of function we're using to retrieve the user's wallet address. So I have a full application that we can look at, and it'll show the it'll show how we import wallets and actually use wallet here. So we have this JavaScript file. Okay, this is my full front end. I'm ready to deploy to testnet. I wrote my React code, I wrote my JavaScript code, and I'm ready to go. Okay, you don't have to use React, it's just what we show in our tutorials. But you'll see here I've got this extra code about importing a wallet. With Reach, if you're developing on EVM networks, MetaMask is supported by default. You do not need to add any extra code to use MetaMask with Reach. It's supported by default. If you launch this into a web browser, you comment all this out, launch that into a web browser, it's still going to bring up your MetaMask. Okay, it's important to understand that. I feel like a lot of times we get questions that are like, how do I use MetaMask? You just use it. It's that simple, you just use it. So I want to make sure that I show you the difference when you talk about working on the Algorand network. So you see I've got this import, I'm going to take this import out. Okay, the wallet fallback for Reach is now saying, okay, look for my algo. It should be on the testnet. So when I launch this application, it's actually going to automatically bring up my algo wallet for me. But if I instead wanted to allow Para, Wallet Connect, or any of the others, I would use that set of keywords and imports, which you can find in our documentation as to what the syntax is for importing each wallet. But let me make sure my Docker containers are down. This is always best practice before you launch a React runner. I don't know what else has been running. Sometimes I do great about maintaining my Docker containers. Sometimes there are a few hundred running, and it looks like this is one of those cases where there are a lot running. So we'll let Docker set down all the containers that we've created, and we'll let it clear out. I'll tell it to export. I want to run on Algorand. And I'll launch my React tool. Now, just to show you a little bit, when you run testnet applications, there are a few things you need to consider if you're not familiar with wallets. The first, you need to set up a wallet, okay? You see I have a toolbar button here for my algo. I'm just gonna click it, okay? It's gonna ask me, hey, welcome back. We know you have an account. This information is stored in your local browser cache. So if you clear your cache, you're gonna need to import your wallet from the mnemonic key. Make sure you have that mnemonic key written down somewhere. You have it stored somewhere that you can access that information and that it's not visible to anyone anywhere. Don't store it on your computer. Don't take a screenshot of it. Personally, I have a little notebook, and every time I need some important password or mnemonic, I write it down in that notebook and I keep it in my safe. Okay. Now that you know that, don't come looking for my safe. So here we have the Reach test wallet. This is what I call this one, Reach test, right? If you're working on the testnet, you need to get testnet tokens. In Reach DevNet, you can say new test account and let Reach fund it for you. But when you move up to the testnet, you need to fund this balance yourself. For Algorand, it's bank.testnet.algorand.network. And that will output a faucet. Okay, this is a public faucet for you to use to fund your account. So I come back in here, I copy the address, right? And I see in the top right here, I'm on testnet, that's important. And then I come over to the dispenser, I paste, I say, I'm not a robot, you're probably gonna have to do a CAPTCHA. No CAPTCHA. And then I dispense, and you'll see code 200, success. And I'll come back in here and you'll see 80, you'll jump up to 90 here in a second. Algorand's really fast, so it won't take very long. 80 jumps up to 90. So why do I show you this? Specifically on the Algorand network, this account needs to have more than 15.6 tokens. I know that's a really specific amount to deploy your application. You need to have enough test tokens to deploy an application, and that number is 15.6. Every time you hit the faucet, you'll get 10 tokens out of it. So I highly recommend that when you start developing your applications, and like, let's say you have a wager and you're thinking to yourself, I'll wager 1 million tokens. Don't do that. You're gonna have to keep coming back to the faucet. So wager 1 token, whatever you have to do, and then you can fund your account from the faucet here. So if I go back, this should be up and ready to go. So I grab that and I paste it here, and I'm gonna see it pops up and says, here's my Algo Connect. That's excellent, okay? So I know now that's how I integrate my Algo wallet and some of the things that go along with my Algo wallet. Yeah, here's the error that you would see. Oop, apologize for that. Here's the error that you would see if you don't have enough algos. This one right here. It's inside this browser console. Okay. It says, you kind of get down through the middle. You see where it says received right here. It says right above the blue eye, received status 400. This account balance, which is 15537, and this is in micro units, is below the minimum 156 ... Okay. So this is where you say you need this many micro algos or 15.6 algos to deploy your application to the testnet. If you don't have enough of those, this is the error that you're going to see. So we've got enough test tokens. We know about getting testnet tokens from Algorand, but what about EVM-based networks? How does Reach deal with EVM-based networks? We said that MetaMask is supported by default. What does that even mean? So let me set down this React runner. Right, it's pointing at Algo. We already told it. I'm going to take this code and comment it out. Make sure my containers are down before I move on. All right, all my containers are down. So let's change which network. Make sure you save your file, the little dot there. No, I'm not saved. So let's make sure we save our file, and then let's tell it, let's clear, and let's just start from scratch. Let's say export the reach connector mode equals ETH. And this is the same for all EVM networks. You're just gonna put ETH. So you say export to ETH, reach, react, and then we're gonna take a look while that builds out at some of the different networks that we can launch on with reach. So I'm going to go back into my Discord channel here. Yeah, so this is directly related to a question we just got, so I'll address it here right now. But it says, is Polygon an EVM chain, or can we deploy to Polygon using reach? Yes, you can. So what you would do is set the connector mode, just like I did, say ETH, okay? And then it's gonna launch your development server for you. Develop just like you're on Ethereum. It's a EVM is EVM in this case. And then when we go up to our, we actually go up to our browser, it should pop open MetaMask instead. Now, what if I want to point at Polygon? So I would bring open my MetaMask before I even deploy my React server. Look at all the different test nets that we test on. These are all primarily test nets that Reach has confirmed to, and all you have to do is select which one, right? I've imported these to my personal MetaMask. You can do the same thing, but let's say we wanted to look at Polygon. So there's this site here that I love this site. You guys, if you don't use this for EVM stuff, you need to. It's called chainlist.org. See, chainlist.org. And then I can come in here and say Poly and flip on test nets. Okay, okay, I see this one says Matic, so I assume that that's the correct one. I tell it connect wallet, add to MetaMask. Okay, it's gonna take the RPC address, it's gonna switch your account, it's gonna do everything you need to do, right? So I'll say switch network. And now when I come up to here, oh, I'm on Polygon and I do have some Matic tokens. Oh, Mumbai, that was already on there. And now you can just run your application. So if I came up and I pasted here now and said localhost with React front end, okay, it knows now that I'm on the Polygon network. Alternatively, what you could do is if you come into, I think Chainlist is probably better to show this too. So if I come back here and I say Polygon, and I flip the switch and I come down here, here are the endpoints. Here are the actual RPC server addresses, and this is what it's importing to your MetaMask. So what you could do is take this, right, and import it into your node environment if you don't want to come up here. A little bit more advanced. I see who's asking that, so if you guys want to know how to do that, reach out to me. I'll show you. I have an example of it. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to take this address and come in here, and then where you're saying provider environment, you put the address, right? Or I think it's set provider by name, set provider by environment, one of the two. And you can look at it in the Reach docs, and it allows you to just specify what's known as the, I'll make sure I put my comment there. What's known as the ETH node URI, and then you would just put HTTPS address goes here, right? And now, we've always said that you can't take your MJS out to the browser, and that's true, but you can connect to the testnet from your MJS file. And then if you want, like, the only difference is now you can't use new test accounts inside that MJS file. I realize I'm in JavaScript here, but if I were in this MJS file, I could just set that provider environment right here and say point at that testnet. So we've got our React or our Reach program up, and now I want to look at the different networks that Reach is compatible with. We don't have access to Nick's MetaMask, so we don't know what he's testing at the moment. But if you come into the Reach Discord channel, and this program's still in test mode, so if she doesn't respond, it's because she's sleeping. But if you come inside here into this EVAI channel, you'll see there's a bot that monitors this channel. And if I just said /faucets, it's going to return a link to all the faucets for all the networks that have been tested for reach. So you come in here and you just say, give me this faucet. So now if I want to say, let's check Metis, I'll copy this link. I'll come in here and say, okay, now I go to this one and it should take me to a Metis faucet. Get tokens, right? Transaction successful. It knows that I've got my MetaMask connected already. I've been to this site before. So if I come back to Metis right here, it'll say, okay, now you've got Metis tokens, right? And to verify, I can then just come back here, make sure my MetaMask is still pointing at the same thing, right? Refresh, launch. We're running Metis tokens, right? So, you know, to really wrap up the conversation about wallets, your wallet is your window into the blockchain. It's your access point into the blockchain. The blockchain does not have your ID. It doesn't know your name. It doesn't know who you are. It knows your wallet address. And this is how we interact with the blockchain. If you see here on account 1, I'll bring this up, it'll show, it's not that one. Account details maybe. Yeah, so here's the address for that account. And now anytime I interact with the blockchain, it knows me as that address and that address only. So when you begin to test, as you are moving out into a public testing environment, you also need to get testnet tokens. You need to get that personal sort of public profile that has your address. You need to fund that account. You need to tell Reach, which network am I talking about, right? I've loved working on the Metis testnet, has been very fast. The Telos testnet, Telos EVM, lightning fast, so fast. 0.5 second block times. It runs incredibly fast. So this is another interesting network to test on. But if you want, again, if you want to specifically test on Polygon, you point it after you tell Reach ETH. That just means the EVM to Reach. You come up here and you say which testnet, right? And if you've been kind of playing around with a few, you're going to need to refresh your application because otherwise you'll be pointing at one and your MetaMask will be looking at the other. So you need to make sure that each time you're kind of switching between networks, that you're checking and making sure that your application is starting afresh, right? So there is a question here about, let me stop there for a second. Yeah, so Near has a few different protocols. I think Aurora is their EVM network. I may be wrong, don't quote me there. But they do have an EVM network that we can deploy Reach to. Part of my process is to actually go through and start to test the advanced functions and advanced features and make sure that we don't come across any unknown errors. And I have yet to do that with Near, but it's on the list. So you can also help me out with that, Bronson, if you like. Do what I just did, right? Go find the Near testnet, get it into your MetaMask, set your connector mode to ETH, and then deploy. See if you get any errors. You know, my assumption is that you won't get any. I believe their EVM is an equivalency as opposed to a compatibility. So that means that it runs the same way that layer 1 EVM runs, and then that means that the way that the bytecode is processed and the ABI and everything for us is the same, and it doesn't matter. So I might hold you to that. I see you. I have not run a Celo test yet. I see that you're asking about Celo. Could test that one too. I have a long list of tests. Like if I had nothing else to do, I would run these tests all day. But the most recent thing I'm working on is a chain link integration. and demonstrating using Chainlink for decentralized oracles and maybe randomness with Reach programs, importing Chainlink and being able to use that. So, all right, we're just about at the top of the hour, so if there are any other questions, I'd love to address those at this point. Otherwise, we will continue these troubleshooting sessions in a kind of a chronological order. So those of you who are really chomping at the bit for the advanced stuff, don't worry, it's coming. We just want to kind of package this as maybe a developer would experience it on their journey, right? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And as we move up into the more advanced things, I expect that those of you who are waiting for the advanced stuff, you're going to be excited about some of the things that we demonstrate. So thank you everyone for your time here today. I really have been enjoying these live sessions, and they're going to continue every Thursday at this time forever. So please reach out to us if there's something you want to see. I'm creating a list based on what you ask me you want to see, and then I'm building that as the weeks go along. So reach out to us, reach out to me, and we will get a list going and build out the things that you guys want to see. That's the most important thing for me in these sessions, is start to really address the things that you want to see and really start to grow what it means to learn the Reach language, especially as one community here. So yeah, I see you, Emmanuel. I've got something in the works. Actually, I think JP's got something more in the works for what you're talking about, but we'll address that too. So all right, everybody, thank you. I appreciate your time. We'll see you next time.